This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today has an extraordinary story of transforming her life from being trafficked and escaping extreme poverty to being a founder, life coach, and real estate investor. Is the inspiration behind her bold mission to teach others that it is possible to do the same. Today, fans worldwide revere her for her mastery of teaching people how to accomplish unfathomable goals and tap into their limitless potential. She has spoken on stages like the Zurich Classic, Dress for Success Worldwide Conference, and Grant Cardone 10X Growth Conference, just to name a few. She has committed her life to providing women that have been trafficked with homes for grace and unleashing people to speak all around the world. Please welcome inspiring motivational speaker, co-founder, real estate investor, and she's dancing in her seat right now, and founder of Unleashed to Speak, Shametria Gonzales.
Yay! No.
Oh my goodness, I loved it. While I'm reading the whole thing,
So good to be here.
I love how you're dancing the whole time while I'm reading it. It was like so awesome. I love the energy.
Yes,
You're
yes,
amazing.
yes. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It came all the way from London.
Oh my goodness. Yes, we were talking about your like travel schedule. So yeah, tell me about like all the maps and everywhere you were just recently. This is so awesome.
Oh, this is going to be good. Okay, so recently I went to Phoenix, Arizona. It was for one of the opening of an organization I'm with called Home for Grace. Then we went there and we went to go to see Tony Robbins with Unleash the Power Within. And that was in London. And then I came back to Arizona, and then I came here to New York. And then I'm leaving from here to go to La Jolla for my friend Raji's birthday. And then I'm going to New York again because I just met somebody yesterday that wants to do some business. And then I'll be done with my travels around August 14th because the kids go back to school.
How many kids?
Two. A boy and a girl.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you travel a lot, and I read in your bio, which is like, this is so funny because like you just mentioned how you travel all these places and it has to do with business and learning and growth and everything. But then you also said you take so much time off to travel personally.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. So it's going to be a sabbatical. I'm doing Camino Le Prea. And so that's a spiritual walk. Oh. It's a walk to give back. So it's going to be basically me and a group of women, and it's like a 30-day walk. Different, like you go from one country, you hop on a bus, you get off, you walk, and then they get back on the bus. And it's supposed to be a walk, and every pillar that we stop at has a spiritual meaning to it. And the whole time you're doing it, you're giving thanks and gratitude for what you've been through and how you've overcome. And, you know, kind of like a wish. It's kind of like a give back of, you know, a pilgrimage. It's like a pilgrimage.
Where is that being held?
It's Camino Le Prea, and it's over different states. So I know it's a little part of Europe.
Oh, so it's, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody wants to Google, it's Camino Le Prea. And it's a spiritual walk, and they have tour guides and things like that. But it goes through like Europe, France, Paris, and it's like an expedition. But there's these walking spaces that people like. It's not just me. It's a lot of people are going to be doing this walk. They just do it at different times because you can go on it at any time during the year.
And you're saying it's a spiritual walk to kind of like cleanse yourself of everything
It'd be
you've been
equivalent to a pilgrimage. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a good starting point too with talking about you and your story, right? Like kind of going right back to, because I'm sure a lot of those feelings and thoughts are going to be coming up during this pilgrimage for you.
Yes.
You have. And we talked about this off mic, and so it's so funny to always get on mic after we just talked about some of this stuff. But you really do. You have such a deep story, and one that I know will strike a chord with many of our listeners.
Yeah.
And for sure over here, I was looking for my tissues before we started, and I couldn't find them. But
okay.
I'm hoping I can put some professionalism in this and not cry on mic. I've done it before.
Wow. Oh my gosh. No, pain is simply weakness leaving the body.
Yeah.
So when we get it out, it goes where it needs to be. Yeah.
So you grew up in a household that not many people grow up in, but people do grow up in them. And I'm saying it that way because I had to share with my daughters the kind of household that you lived in because they didn't understand. So my daughters are 6 and 8.
Okay.
And I want to say it was about 2 years ago, they didn't understand why Santa Claus doesn't go to certain kids' houses. My wife is a teacher in the city of Poughkeepsie, and Poughkeepsie is an urban area in our area. So just for everybody to know, Shametria came not just from London, but from Texas. She's originally from Texas to be here in Poughkeepsie in the Hudson Valley with us today. So I gotta let her know where certain things are sometimes, just in case. So Poughkeepsie is a very urban area and has a lot of children that are in foster care, like you once were. And so my children didn't understand that. And so sharing with them as to why certain kids are in foster care and is a whole other conversation. Yeah. And the way that I was able to share it with my now 6-year-old, because she was asking more about it, because there was there was a foster I forget the name of the organization at one of our chamber meetings, and I brought back stuff, Home for Children in Poughkeepsie. And I brought it back to her, and she was like, what is this for? And I started explaining. She goes, why don't they have parents? And I said, well, they have parents. She goes, how are they born if they don't have parents? And I said, but they have parents. It's just that their parents right now can't take care of them. Yeah. And so your story goes deep into that, and I would love for you to share what you experienced, what it was like, how you were able to overcome it to emancipate yourself at 15 years old. Yeah,
so I will start off with, I used to tell my story so different, and then I had to honor that my mother and father gave birth to me and that they always fought for me, and they had a sickness called drugs that they were addicted to that was a little stronger than their will or love for what they really wanted, which was me. And so they did try to come back and get me, but ultimately I just want to start with that part, because I used to just tell the story. I didn't realize my mom and dad are still alive, right? So they started hearing things, and then I got really big and everywhere, and everybody hears it. So I just want to honor that, for myself. I do know my mother and father, but I didn't have the luxury to live with them. And so my mom grew up she got, pregnant with me in the 90s, but right before that was the crack epidemic. So she was addicted to drugs, and my father was as well. And so when my mom had me, I was born with crack in my system. So I say from the beginning, I'd been fighting for my life. Wow. So my mom would go off and do her thing, and I would be here, and I would, she started off with me, and then I got taken, and then my grandmother took me in, and then an auntie took me in, and then I got a notarized republic. Then I went to foster care. Then I got out, and my grandmother got me back, and then I went so it's this long array of house to house, home to home. And I never had a solid home from 0 to 15. So one day I was talking to my social worker. So one of the good things in Texas, I'm a Texas girl. Texas has an amazing school system that has an amazing social work system that has amazing resources, because they're a very rich state. So I was pretty much a golden child in school. School was my everything. I thrived in school. So I was a student council. I was president of student council. I was I didn't have any structure at home, but I stayed at school because I got to eat there. I was a great student athlete, so other parents liked me. They would take me out to eat and stuff after games. Like, my life was school until 15. So at 15 years old, I was talking to my social worker, and I was like, look, I don't like this situation I'm at, living with these people. I'm gonna just keep it like these people to be nice.
These are the foster people.
Yes. Right. And so I said, I don't like the system that I'm in, and I know they get money from me. Like, I could take care of myself. She was like, well, there's actually a law in the state of Texas that says if you emancipate yourself, you could be legally grown. You could do your own paperwork. You could work. You'd be an adult. I was like, how do I do that? So she started looking up on, this was a little bit before we had the phones with the Google and
internet. This was your first entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, this was my first entrepreneurial journey. I'm like, how do I do that? So we looked into it, and I went to court for it. And the first thing they did was they were like, look, you ain't got no job. there's no way you can take care of yourself. Like you have to come back with something else. So I go to get a job. I go start working at Sonic Drive-In. I get letters of recommendation from my student coach, from the principal. I'm like, I could do this, like, you know. So I take it back. I get my emancipation granted. So at that point, that means I was grown and nobody else was watching over me. No legal system, no social workers, no foster kid, nobody checking in. So I like to tell young women, there's seasons you're going to go through in life. Don't be too quick to be an adult. Don't be too quick to be grown. May not be the best situation in mine. You know, I emancipated myself, but I really thought in my brain that I was grown and I had made it because of this decision that had been made. And I started acting grown, and I started to be in grown-up situations, and I had nobody to protect me or to watch over me. At least in foster care, you had to check in. So they were always, it would have, if I would have went missing, they would have been somebody would have been alerted. So when people are like, well, how did you get trafficked? That was the start of it. So my emancipation was too prone. It was good, and it was the start of my adulthood and the end of my freedom.
I know we're going to get into trafficking.
Yeah.
Before we do that, I have a couple questions. So one of them is just, and this is just lack of knowing how it all works in terms of, you said that you were born with crack in your system.
Yeah.
So, and this is what we hear as crack babies, right?
Yeah.
So is that essentially what it was? And so what kind of treatment do they do to keep you alive and to make sure, I guess, because you never suffered from any addiction, I don't know of.
So I didn't suffer from addiction, but I have an addictive personality.
And it stems from?
And it stems from that. I had a lot of complications. So people are like, she got so much energy, she be up. Like, that was one of the effects of it, was this very hyper ADHD, don't know like how to stop talking, always on go, very much full of energy, and energy is valuable now. But as a kid, I was always getting whoopings. I was always getting told to shut up. I was always told to, you know, like what's wrong with her? Like, she, you know, calm down. Like, she's so hype. Nobody wanted to watch me. Like, I was so much. And I think that was one of the effects. I also suffer from memory loss. So I speak in spirit, I speak in truth and in the moment, but I'll never remember what I say. I don't remember certain situations that happened a week ago. And I still suffer from that today. And then I would say probably the biggest one is dyslexia. So I don't see things the way people see things. I have to really slow down and think or watch or like I would at this counting disorder. So like I would like look at, like when I was driving, I remember being a kid in the car and like I would look at the billboards and I'd count the numbers. So if it was like Tom's shop, I'd count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and like I'd have to do it until it equaled 10. So it's these weird things that I really can't describe, but I knew something was different. I knew that I was also very small. Like I'm very proud of my weight now. I'm a country girl, Southern girl, so you know, being a little thicker is in style. But for me, thickness means healthiness. Thickness means that I'm not my product of how I was born. I'm strong. I go to the gym. I can move stuff like that.
You're very fit. Yes.
Very fit.
Yes. I got to put my arm around her. And I was like, I should have done a few more push-ups this morning. But
I take that as something that I really value. So being a crack baby, there's certain people that have complications that maybe have to be in an incubator at first or that are born preemie. I was a preemie, but ultimately I was able to stay, I think, a few months in the hospital, and then I was able to get out and, you know, redevelop myself. I went and stayed with my grandmother, if what my recollection is from the beginning. And my mother would get out of prison, or she'd get out of rehab, or, you know, whatever her sickness would lead her to.
Right.
And she'd always try to come back and get me. And I'd always try to go back with her. But it was this cycle and it never ended. So, you know, I honor her. I pray that she gets well one day, and I love her to death. And she tried her hardest based on her capacity.
Right.
But I have come to grips with maybe that relationship will never be mended, but that's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's like you just said, like there's a reason why they kept fighting to try to get you back.
Yes.
Right. And I guess you're fortunate in that sense too, right?
Yeah.
For that is that you did have parents who loved you. They just, and I love that you acknowledge that they just couldn't. And then your grandmother, I always wonder about these, I guess, cycles, right?
Yeah.
Because so many kids, and like I said, you know, from personal experience of knowing like some of the students that my wife deals with, they go back to the grandparents. And so I never understand, how did the mother of, like your mother, have a grandmother, have a mother that is actually able to take care of you. Like where was the break?
Yeah. So if you want to look on YouTube, there's a video, and I actually went home and I took video of the house that we lived in. It was a shack. It was a 1-bedroom shack, and it didn't have doors. It had sheets. We had a wash bucket. We washed dishes in a bucket. We had a hot plate that we did on the stove, but I never would have known we were poor. So my grandmother took care of us with love. She also used the government assistance, government cheese. The church in the Black community is a big pillar of strength, and especially back in those days. And so they would buy us school clothes. Reverend Wicks, I'll never forget, they bought us Christmas gifts. You know, I went to church 2-3 times a week as a Pentecostal little girl growing up. So it was a community-based situation where my grandmother had all 4 of my mother's children. My oldest sister, Ashley, actually left to go upstate to San Marcos. But me and my brother and my little sister, we were there with my grandmother off and on throughout times. And when my grandmother died, that was it. But she took care of us with love. And beans. We ate a lot of beans.
And so is that where your mother grew up, in that same home that you grew up in?
Yes, but my mom, not the same home, same country town.
And so where is it that your mother, I guess, lost her way? What brought her to?
Oh, that's so good. I've only put this in my movie script, but I'll share it with you.
Oh, I love that. That's a little teaser for her movie.
Yes. My mother, and everybody in the family knows this, my mother was raped by her father when she was 9 years old. My grandmother was raped by her father. My grandmother was never married. My mother was married but divorced to this point. So it was this cycle of women that did not have a good relationship with men. And for my mom got pregnant at 11 years old. She had her first baby at 12 years old. My sister Ashley. But my sister Ashley has a PhD. She's one of the lead women in Jack and Jill organization. 3 kids, same father, married, big old house in Dallas. So that 11, my mother made a choice at 11 that produced that. So you never know. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But my mom went through so much trauma, and she was raped many times, beat, ran over. This woman got into drugs, and oh God, after that, it was just deteriorating. When she went to jail, she'd be fat. When she got out, she'd be skinny. I didn't know the cycle, but then I started to pick up on it. And this was my whole life until 15. So the cycle of the grandmother raising the child and my mother losing her way. My mother lost her way because my grandmother had 15 kids, 1 girl. The rest were boys.
Oh my goodness.
None of the boys had children except my mother.
Wow.
None. My mom had 4 kids, 1 boy, 3 girls. My brother still has not had kids, but all of the girls have produced off seeds. So it's this crazy thing. They call it a generational curse in the Black community. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't. Go ahead.
So a generational curse is that, they'll curse your children's children based on what you've done. And so they've always said, you're cursed. You be just like your mama. I don't believe in that. I believe in the Most High. I believe in God. I believe in the power of the human mind, but in the laws of the universe. But I know that back then, my mother, it started from the rape, and then it went into the oppression, and then it went into her mother not loving her, and then it went fully into the drugs. And the drugs were this little fix that just kept getting more and more and more and more.
Well, the drugs were there for her to try to not have to feel the pain of her past. And I think, we're going to talk about your mentors and how that's so important, right? And I can tell just by what you just shared there of how the church really probably helped your grandmother as well. But your grandmother being raped and not having the same emotional
she
strength
was mean. She was not mean to me, but she was just one of those women that
you don't mess with her.
Don't mess with her. And she had a house on the corner. Everybody came to her house to socialize. So I think that's where I got my socialization skills. Everybody loved my grandmother. She was her name was Ruba Lee Amos.
Yeah, that's a name. That's definitely, that's like one of the names that go in the movie and you're like, who made that one up?
Ruba Lee Amos.
Oh my goodness.
And she took care of all of my mama's kids, and with love, a lot of beans and cornbread. We didn't have any fast food. We didn't have any stores. We lived in a rural area called Garwood, Texas. Garwood. This place was 30 minutes northeast, southwest from the closest Walmart. All we had was one convenience store. No fast food, no, we played outside. We didn't have any entertainment, no telephone, no TV. So I grew up in a way that I'm grateful for now. It made me who I am. And I didn't know I was poor till I told other people told me and made fun of me.
Right.
And I was like, wait, because I was so happy. So happy.
In where you were.
And where I was. Because I didn't know different.
And, you know, what you're making me think about is you're in the South.
Yeah.
Last name Gonzales, so I don't know exactly what your whole
so my
ethnicity
dad's
is.
Mexican and my mom is black.
And your mom's black, okay.
And Native American. So my grandmother was a little Cherokee, and she had like these piercing eyes with like this long gray hair. Sure, Jesus, she scared me.
Was it a diverse community that you were in?
It was segregated.
They
still had a Lions Club that said no colors allowed. So we know black people, we had our space, and there was a train track. And then you had the white people. But because I played sports, everybody loved me. So I was able to go to both sides. And they also knew that I was poor and I didn't have my family and stuff like that. So people just looked out for me my whole life. Picked me up, took me on trips, vacations, stuff like that with their family. So I was always very diversified.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So you weren't closed into this one community. You were able to experience all the different cultures and different people.
Yeah.
For as much as what it was. Right?
Yeah. And it was kind of a mix of both because the Spanish side used to call me like negrita or like blackie. And be like, oh, is that your hair? Like, yes, it's my hair. And then the black side would be like, you little wetback. Like, no offense to anybody out there, but like that's what they called you. This is what they called me, and I'm like, what? So it just was weird, but it was an identity crisis because I was beautiful, a lot of energy, long curly hair.
Are beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But I was different. Everywhere I went, there was nobody like me. I mean, there were other mixed girls, but they didn't have this like energy of like, I was always on go.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, I have a lot of relatable stories for you, but I want to get deeper into your story. But like, when you're talking about your energy and you're like ADD and dyslexia. So I'm dyslexic, by the way.
Oh, wow. So
and I'm high energy, ADD, all that stuff. Yeah. And like, don't read. Like, I listen to books on tape, that kind of thing. Like, I learn all through YouTube and Audible. But my daughter, the one I was telling you about, Tenley, my 6-year-old, she's so high energy, and it's so hard to like to get her to calm.
Yes.
Right. And it's only because of like all the coaching and all the books and all the mentors that I've gone through that I'm able to like connect with her and look at her in the eyes and go. I literally grab her by the head. Right. And I look her in the eyes. I go, look at my eyes. I go, we just gotta breathe. We gotta talk because I need you to stay calm. And that doesn't always work.
Nope.
But, it's a start. So I'm like, there's so many relatable. And the other one that I want to bring up for you, just so you know, is, and I think my audience knows this about me, so I'm half Haitian. And
what?
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm going with this because of what you were just talking about, how like the black community looked at you one way because you're half Mexican, Mexican community and white and all the other looked at you another way because you're dark, right? Yeah. So I'm half Haitian and my mother's white. My mother's the Haitian one and she's white.
Wow.
But it's interesting because I'm Italian and Haitian. So my Italian side looks at me as like, I'm not really Italian. I'm Haitian, right? Without saying too much there, which you could read between the lines. and then my Haitian side, and they really embrace me. And I want to say, both sides always have embraced us and our cultures for what we are. But even so, like on my Haitian side, like I'm white, and I have a lot of white cousins on my Haitian side.
Yeah.
There's actually, it was like kind of funny because we actually have a couple more Italian Haitians on my Haitian side.
Yeah.
So it's more common within my family. But as we expand outside of like the nuclear base of the family of like the really close cousins, and we expand into like the cousins of cousins that are darker. That's where it's like, well, you're really Italian. You're not really Haitian.
Right.
So it's like always catch people off guard. But what I'm saying in that is that I understand the identity crisis.
Yes.
That's really what I mean. It's not about them, how they accept or don't accept or feel or whatever. It's just that I identify as a Haitian, right? I see them as my people.
Yeah.
And when I see what happens in Haiti, it upsets me.
It's bad right now.
And like, I mean, and that's on a negative side. On a positive side, like my wife is really big into soccer, and so every morning she's got the U.S. Open on.
Yeah,
and I am against TV in the morning. Like I'm like have my coffee in silence, right?
Yes.
And I've got everybody accustomed to that. But my wife came out this morning. She puts the TV on, And I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, World Cup's on. I was like, what? And I'm like,
nothing else matters.
I'm like, huh? Haiti was playing today. And I was like, did you do that for me?
No
and
way.
She's just like, well, I'm watching the World Cup and Haiti's playing. And I got all excited. I was just like, what's going on? And we scored 2 goals that were taken away from us because we were offside.
Oh,
and then
my gosh.
China ended up getting the penalty kick.
No.
And I think we lost. I didn't catch up with the rest of it because I had to get running. But I understand what you're saying. I didn't experience any type of racism. I didn't experience any type of name calling or being left out of anything because of it. But as a person, I do, like when I walk into a room, like my sister and I went, and my brother and a couple others, when the earthquake happened, we were invited because we have an organization for God and Children of Haiti. Okay. So our organization was invited to Jay-Z's club in the city, the 4040 Club, for a town hall of all the Haitian youth to talk about how can we help everybody in Haiti. So our organization was invited. My sister, myself, my brother-in-law, who all look like me, showed up, and our best friend, Giscard, who's also Haitian, but black, from the Caribbean, we all went together. And when the mics were going around the room, they handed it to Giscard and they said, and tell us about Forgotten Children of Haiti. And he's just like, huh? He goes, no, I'm a volunteer. I'm here. I sit on the board with them. But Michael and Marina Well are the ones who run the...
Oh, my God.
And they look at us and they're like, oh, so why did you start this organization? We're like, we're Haitian.
We're Haitian.
And we've been there.
What do you mean?
And and that was part of the process was a lot of people would say, and have you ever been there? I'm like, well, first of all, have you ever been there? And most of them are like, no, never been. And I'm like, yeah, I have. Yeah. I mean, I was 9 and I get it, but yeah, I have. And but anyway, the whole point is that I get that struggle. Like, correct. It took time for me, and I'm sure for you, to be able to be like, yeah, you know what? I love my Mexican side. I love my black side, and that's who I am, and I love it. And it's sometimes challenging. Yeah,
I went to a magic show very recently. I forgot his name. He's one of the most popular magicians in the world in Las Vegas, and he said it was this beautiful orchestra of a life journey that he went through, and he was able to have like this little alien friend, and the alien came to help him. It was like a huge magic show. And the alien friend was like, I was sent here from another planet to solve your problems on Earth. And I feel like I failed because there's no love, and all of the problems in the world can be solved by love. So I think that as you're talking about this and like all of these things, like that it really resonated with me, because I was like, we just got to love each other and like for who we are. And the book, The 4 Agreements, said that we make a decision to believe in the map. But I love that book, but then I also think I don't want to take away from the fact that we have very different experiences in every walk of life, in every culture, in every religion, in every race. So it's not that we want to be divided, but we also have to honor that each person is his own individual, has their own individual experience. And so I believe that we are all one, and that we should all be one. But I also believe that in that individuality is what makes us one.
Yes.
So just being able to be that in all of us, and experience that is so. All of our problems in the world can be solved by love. And so all of that stuff they did to us, I always was a loving person. So I never really saw it. It did not bother me. I'm telling you, people had to tell me I was poor.
Right.
Before I realized, like, what's this poor thing they're talking about?
Yeah.
I eat beans every day. I thought that was normal. Like, what is fast food? Like, what do you mean fast food? Like, what is that? Seriously. It was very rural where I grew up.
I understand that. And, it's we had the opportunity. We have these old couches, these like hand-me-down couches in the house, and we had the opportunity to get a newer set because my mother-in-law is moving out. Ooh. And my daughters got so upset. We are not getting rid of these couches.
No.
And they're like, well, what if something spills? And what if that? And they just didn't want to get rid of them. And we're like, but they're like a little, like we have a cover on them. Like they're a little beat up. Like we want like nicer. And they're like, no, we love our couches. These couches. So sometimes, as kids, it's like perception. But I love your outlook on that in terms of like, we are one. And like as a human, like we have this human experience on Earth, right? And Wayne Dyer talks about it. I'm sure you know,
just
right?
Spiritual beings having
or
human
talked about it exactly. But the cultures are so important to celebrate and to celebrate our differences. I really appreciate you saying that because I think it's so important to be able to say to somebody, "You're black, I'm white. Let's talk. Like let's figure. Like tell me about the South, right? Like we want that." And I think it's so important when we think about racism and what's happening in society and our culture here in America is that it's because people don't talk about it or are afraid to talk about it. And I remember, I feel like Dave Chappelle has been outspoken about that, of like loving having a racist friend because he's like, at least I know what you're thinking.
Right. Thank you. Tell me. Like, thank you. I've done business. I just went to the UK. They had a different way of how they did business, how they approach, how they talk. I'm in New York. Yesterday I went to a real estate event, and this guy, I was telling about my foundation, was in helping speakers, and he was like, well, how do you make money from stage? I was like, well, this. He was like, well, what's your equitable? I'm like, sir, we have nothing else to talk about. Me and your energy don't align, but I appreciate you for your time. He was like, well, if it ain't about money, I don't want to hear about it. I knew my conscience was right. Have a great day, sir. Right? So it's like, I didn't let that affect my energy. I didn't change me for that. Freedom is really being able to be in one energetic force field no matter where you go at all times. And that is you, authentically you operating in flow. That's freedom. So if we can all be free in one world, then freedom won't be something that's the top issue of legislative branch. So we have to identify these things. Like, what is freedom? And if you go to other parts of the country, like I've been now, I'm starting to see that freedom is them being who they are. And me learning about that is what makes me more free. And because now I have the freedom to know that there is different, but it's the same, which even makes me feel more free, because it's like, you can be you, I can be me, but we're all connected to source. We're all in this planet, whatever you want to call this place.
Right.
And, we can go on about
lava
that.
Rock.
But this lava rock, this flat surface, round surface, like, we don't know. Who knows? We don't know. But what I do know is that when you love, you put smiles on people's faces, you put smiles on your face, and you have the ability to be who you are. You live without anxiety or worry of what other people thinking. It ain't my business what other people think about me. So, when they're asking, like, how do you share your story so like freely, I am okay with my story, and I care less what anyone judges me on based on my past. I judge you in the moment, because what you did back then or what you're going to do ain't got nothing to do with how you show up right now. So just be present and really take that time to get to know another person, get to have, like, you inviting me out. I'm a Southern Belle country girl from Texas, but Grant Cardone saw something in me, which is how I got to GrowthCon and on that stage. And I will talk about that later, but my intention caught his attention. When you saw me and judged me on stage, you were like, oh, I love her. Not look at her shoes, like, oh, her hair, or, oh, she's so pretty. No, it was something that you felt based off of what I put out, because my intention was simply to connect with those that God had put out for me in order to help me in my dream. That was all my intention was. It wasn't even a win.
Right.
That would have been cool.
Yes.
But that wasn't the intention.
And just so everybody knows, when she says I judged her, I had the great honor of being a judge at 10X Stages. Not 10X Stages, but the Great American Speak Off. And see Shametria perform on stage and get to give my feedback for her. And yes, you're right. When I reached out to you, I remember your energy. I'm right now vividly imagining you walk out with what you did in the energy. And I actually know my feedback of like what I really loved about it and where I was kind of like, okay. And actually the judges brought it up and I was just like, oh, okay, that's exactly it. That's where I lost it. But you were high energy, fantastic, great story. And to bring us back to this story, and everything that you're talking about right now, just for everybody to know, is that, when we're talking about the life coaching that you do, the work that you do, the talking on stage and how you help other speakers be able to sell from stage, all the work that you do is because of this story that we're talking about. So for everybody that's listening, this is where the inspiration comes from, is that everybody has a story, everybody overcame something, and it's really about revisiting that and journaling on it, writing about it, sitting in it a little bit, forgiving yourself for whatever pain you need to forgive yourself for, and then sharing it, because that's how you're going to inspire people. And so now I want to move into this 15-year-old self where I need to be educated on this, and I think many need to be educated on this, and what sex trafficking is, what this all is, because we think of it as like those movies of like this sex ring that's being held by like some Russians overseas, but it's happening right here in our backyard.
And it looks a lot different.
Right.
Yeah. So the 15-year-old self had emancipated myself. I was excited with life. I was working my job. I used to be on rollerblades at Sonic Drive-In. Like, I was getting my money, my little $5, $10 tips. I was doing my thing. And I had such high energy. I was a student athlete. So I would go to school in Texas. They're serious about their sports. Okay. So if you good in sports, everybody look out for you. Teachers, everybody. So, but you didn't hear that from me. So when I would go to school, I had something called two-a-days because it was going into the summer of my high school year. I had to go to school in the morning. We would do, before school, we had athletics.
Right.
So I'd get there early. We do workouts, go to athletics. I go to all my classes. I get out of school, off season, I go straight to work. 7 days a week. There's child labor laws. I understand, but I was grown. And it was to the point to where I needed money so bad because I had to produce everything for myself that my supervisor would let me clock off and just...
Clock back in.
No, clock off, be off the clock, but just get the tips from running the car hops because I needed it. And like sometimes, I had friends, I'd go stay at people's houses, I'd sleep on couches. I did whatever I had to do because I knew that if I emancipated myself, I could make it. Something about a young girl that works 7 days a week that's pretty, got everything in the world, and you got these women pulling up in this nice car, watching me for months, giving me $20, $50 tips. $100 tip is the biggest one they gave me. It was on my birthday. So they built rapport with me.
I was going to say buying your trust.
They bought my trust, and then they started to talk to me. And they were like, what do you do? Why are you here all the time? Like, we see you almost all the time because they frequent the area. That was their route. Once I got into it, I realized that they literally went to schools that had jobs close walk distance because those are most of the kids that were vulnerable that had to work there every day. And they would look for young girls who were by themselves, who looked unhappy, who, for myself, they befriended me. They would ask me questions about my life. I told them I emancipated myself. I'm legally grown. Like, I'm not thinking I'm talking to a devil. Like, I'm thinking I'm talking to girls that want to help me. So they would always say, you need to come get some money. I'm like, I love my job. Like, I'm good at money. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, they never said how, but they said that they were very successful. So after that, they got me because they said, you need family. You need somebody to protect you. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, I do. So I go with the girls. This was after months. They pick me up in a nice car. We go and we meet this man named Snake. So
this was his name.
This was his name. He branded every last one of us. You guys can't see in the studio.
Right.
There's a huge snake from the top of my back all the way to the bottom of my arm, half midway. And it was very strategic. It was a rattlesnake head with a python body. I don't know why, but every girl has the same tattoo. We're talking about hundreds of women. So I actually want to reach out and give back. I'm gonna tell you why it was hard for me to keep connection after what happened. But back to the 15-year-old self meeting Snake. And Snake, he did stuff to me that I never had happen. And it was like I was just sprung, right? One time, never touched me again. He did that to every female that came into the organization. I realized
made
now.
you fall for him kind of thing in that way.
No, he did stuff to my body, like sexually, that I never had done. And so it was like head over heels.
15-year-old girl. Right.
Like, I'm like, whoa.
Okay.
I'm indebted to you.
Right.
He said, you get a house, access to the car. You don't ever got to do anything you don't want to do. But you just got to be a part of the team. I was like, oh, okay, good. I've got a house, a big old mansion.
You think he's your boyfriend?
What?
Right.
I'm special. I'm all those peasant girls, not like me, not knowing it's the same with every girl. So basically we get in there. First thing, it was high level poker games. We go there, we dress a certain way, and men would do stuff with us. I didn't think too much about it because I knew I had to pay my way. I live with you. Y'all take me everywhere. I have to pay my way. So I didn't think too much about it.
And everybody's making it seem like it's normal.
It was normal. You can't escape your environment. So if your environment is this, it doesn't seem like it's anything wrong. And he let me keep going to school. About a year later, he introduces a drug to us. He was like, look, y'all need to forget stuff and be looser because we need to make more money. Like, this gonna help us. So I'm like, okay, cool. I never took a drug because I knew my mama was addicted. My grandma, like, I didn't never want to get addicted to anything. But he said it was a private doctor that gave us the drug. We're not thinking drug. Like, to the people out there, it's not like I'm thinking I'm taking a narcotic. I think I'm taking a drug that's
like
gonna
RX, yeah.
Yeah, like from a doctor. This is a real professional doctor that gave us this drug. And it was supposed to be to help us loosen up and to forget what happened. So take that for a couple months. Same doctor comes back. Man, y'all doing so good. You know, now we're gonna spice it up a little bit more and we're gonna give you a shot. I'm terrified of needles. So he started giving us shots. At that point, I couldn't produce in school anymore. I didn't have any memory of anything, really. It would come back to me. But most of the stuff I don't remember verbatim. So the traumas of being with somebody and not really knowing who that person is, that was a big one that I would forget. So I was cool with that one. But then I started to forget my name. I started to forget what day it was. I started to forget what my life was like. I didn't know any, like it was, I think now it was like a roofie, but on steroids, like a roofie on steroids, mixed with like Molly.
So what, like walking around in a daze kind of thing?
Always, never conscious. And I couldn't go anywhere. So then they started putting the locks on the doors on the outside. So and there was cameras. There was cameras in every part of the house. So bathroom, everywhere. So basically.
So at first you didn't see all of this stuff, and now you're starting to notice it.
But it was there.
Right, but you never.
So 17 now, and we got the pills, we got out the way, we're doing the shots now. I'm dealing with people. I'm like, everybody's still good. I'm dropped out of school, but I had took my ACT, my SAT, and I had graduated early.
Oh, thank goodness.
Technically, right. I didn't graduate, but I had enough credits to graduate early. This is all this is going to matter in a little bit. So I get to the point to where I am like kind of over it now, because I'm like, I've never made $1.
Right.
I live with you, but you lock me in the room. There's all these new girls. You never touched me again since day one. And I'm starting to think you using me. Like, that was the basis of like my thought. Like, is he using me? That was like the most innocent thought, but it was on using me on steroids. So part of me.
Yeah, and finally, like, and it was happening because like these were these like tiny moments of sobriety.
Yeah. So basically, I'm 15 when I start, and gradually the women recruited me. Started off with one drug, went to another drug. By the time we got to the shots, it was literally like you laying in a bed and you go to sleep, you wake up. Go to sleep, you wake up.
But things are happening.
So I got pregnant because when I was conscious, I could tell the man, strap up, don't do this, you know, don't do that. Like,
you had your checklist.
I had my checklist. When that happened, there was one or two things that happen if you got pregnant. They bring the private doctor to abort it, or they take your baby when it's born. The laws in the United States of America only require a child to speak their name when they're traveling with an adult. It's really sad because they were able to take these babies or take these, kids or across seas over the water. All you got to do is say this your child. So I actually worked on coalitions to try to change these laws and navigate this space where we can help others, help other people to cut back on the trafficking, because who's really going to go with their face and this child to the airport? People that are never coming back to the country. What do you mean? They're called mules. And so I knew when I was pregnant that like, I want to have this baby, but I need to figure something out. So I asked to go back and finish school. That way, if I'm in school, I can hide it. And he did favor me. They favored me a little. Like, I was a great producer. I'd make so much money that other girls would come to me like, he's going to kill me if you don't like, and I'd figure something out to get some. I was always very smart. I was the same person, but I just had different loyalty. Now my loyalty is God. So I put a man before, God at that point. He was my God. If I would have died for him easily, any of those women would have died for him, because that's what he put into our brain. It was, was this psychological weird covenant, like maybe even like a real covenant that he made with like the dark power. I don't know, but it was bad.
Well, you talked about brainwashing, and I'm interested in that, about the mindset of your mindset.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just your mindset, but I think it's just anybody's mindset when they allow themselves to be brainwashed.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of like set it up at like this for you to maybe help kind of like as to what my question is, which is that from what I'm learning about you, right, in this story here, your story here, is that you were desperate to find success somehow.
Yes.
You were desperate to, like you said, you were emancipated. I got to make it. I got to make it. So whatever is being offered to you that looks like success, you're willing to follow that path.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's the mindset that allowed you to be brainwashed. Yeah. And he's painting this picture of success and power and prestige and all this other stuff, when meanwhile it's not true. It's false, right? Yeah. So I'm just, if you can share with everybody about like that, what is that mindset like of like?
Yeah.
Right?
So the mindset is, I mean, if you want to go, Dr. Dwayne Dwyer, fight, flight, or freeze, right? You're in this space of survival, and the human mind is going to find an answer. It's a machine. It's there to produce answers. So I also was very spiritual. So I'm like, oh, this is a gift from God. It wasn't just there's a man who has this thing and he's going to help me. It was like, all my answers have been like my prayers have been answered. Like, God, you're real. But it was really Lucifer disguised, and you know, in the flesh to me in disguise. And so once you're in it, like even with my daughter, like I said, I'm going to have her. I got to find a way. So it's still not like I didn't think that if I can find a way to have my child, I could find a way to get out of the situation. Right. I didn't want to get out.
Right.
And people bash me for that all the time. Like they're like, "Why are you saying this?" Like, this is my experience. Mm-hmm. This is the truth of what I'll tell you when I wanted to get out and why it changed. It wasn't because of me, but at that age, I knew 17. I left out, went to school. I would hide myself. So here's this thing. It's a bit gruesome. So to my audience, you know, please take care of yourself if any of this is too much for you. But so I even have to scratch my neck a little bit on it because it's real. But women, if they took your baby, you have 2 weeks. On your period, you don't have any. You work on your period. Or the doctor would give you shots to stop your period. That had a lot of bad side effects, and I didn't want to take the shot, so I would use makeup swabs, makeup wipes, the things that sponge that you put makeup on. Right. So they would give us those, and they would put them up a woman because it soaked up the blood, but it still felt like insides.
For the person that's trying to have sex with you. Okay.
It's crazy. So if red flag, if you see a man buying 20 packs of makeup swabs, might be a red flag. Mm-hmm. But so I would still take my makeup swab, my things, because they gave them to us each month. I'd still take them, dispose of them at school. I'd still was doing my thing, and like I was working harder because I didn't want no attention on me. About 6.5 months, I knew it was time. So I never got sick. God was really with me. I never showed that much. I didn't change anything. It was no mood swing. I was just pregnant. I was hoping to go through the whole pregnancy without being caught, but I got caught at 6.5 months. Mm-hmm. So one of the men complained about my body, and crazy, right? So they come to me and they say, you got 2 choices. We take the baby and we take your life, or when you have the baby, we take the baby. I was like, well, it's one choice, not 2. But psychology. So I was like, I'll have the baby, because they weren't going to kill their product. I didn't think about that. But they put fear in me. I produce for you. Why are you going to kill me? You're just mad because I have this baby and I'm not able to do what it is that you...
For a couple months. Yeah.
So then they started to advertise men that had a fetish to be with women that was pregnant. They always found a way. And like I remember vividly one of the very wealthy man that always came, and he would just like kiss my stomach and like rub my belly and say, it was horrible. But I just remember they found a way to still make money off of me, right? In that condition. So I have my baby. I had been working with somebody from my school because I would never tell, because I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. So it was still this goodness in my heart, but I knew something wasn't right. So
and you said I give my baby you were living this double life, of going to school. And,
Yeah. So I give my baby up to a woman. Her grandson had befriended me in school. He loved me, but I couldn't do it. The rule was you cannot have a boyfriend, or they would hurt him. Mm-hmm. Like I was afraid. I want y'all to really understand, the listeners, that this isn't like no pimp on the street that got 2-3 girls. Mm-hmm. This is a multi-billionaire that has mansions, cars, lots, political stake. Dominican, he was Dominican or Cuban something. He looked Spanish. He looked like us, but gorgeous person. And the people that were pulling up were rich. So it wasn't no little operation. This was a business.
This is like what the Jeffrey Epstein thing kind of like uncovered a little bit for us, or brought to some reality for some of us that didn't know.
Yes. And on top of that business, they taught us business. They were like, look, you're going to be you're an independent contractor if anybody asks what you do to make money. Mm-hmm. They used to bring men as undercover to test us. If you failed the test, they would kill you. Mm. Literally.
Because nobody knows where you are anyway.
Yeah. And on top of that, if somebody does come to want to help you, you're not going to trust them. It was psychology. Mm-hmm. So basically, long story short.
What were some of the things that they would say so that you wouldn't trust the people that know you?
Okay, one is that outside of these walls, nobody love you. Nobody going to take care of you. All you got is your family. Mm. If somebody come and try to break up our family, they got to go. Because if you break one, you tear down the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And you guys are y'all sisters. So if you hurt her, you hurt your sister.
It's not just you that you're saving. You're hurting everybody if you do that.
Yes. And then they would say that.
So they wanted you to love each other because that's kind of like what keeps the link together.
Yes. Yes. And that's also what broke us free. Mm-hmm. So I give my baby up. I knew she'd be safe with his grandmother. Her name's Cynthia. I gave her to Cynthia.
This man's grandmother.
Yes.
Okay.
She took over paperwork of her. No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
In school,
the boys.
There was a boy in school.
Right. His grandmother.
I'm gonna call him D.
Okay.
And D befriended me and loved me, but he never knew what I was doing. He's like,
his grandmother took it.
Like he's like, what's going on in your life? Why do you disappear so much? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm just working. Like. He didn't put 2 and 2 together because there was no Me Too movement. There was no education on trafficking. It was really just, in the Black community, they call it pimping, which is completely different than what happened to me.
Right.
But it was this cultural stigma around it. So I'm like, I ain't telling nobody what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Even worse. So I give up my baby.
Yeah, you think you have this little business on the side and you don't want anybody to ruin it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I give up my baby and I go back. Now he's mad at me. So now, I'd never been beat before then. Mm. He started beating on me, talking down to me. Now I'm starting to feel like, wait, it's not what we talk, this is not right. So they introduced another drug. This drug, I say, would probably be equivalent to meth. It puts you into zombie state. Like you literally see me drooling. Like I'd just be laying there like drooling. I couldn't get up, I couldn't move. And with that one, it was very toxic because a lot of women died from it. So they messed with the wrong one. She was a little girl. She was 12 years old. She just got there a couple months ago. And I looked after her. Like at this point, I'm looking after other people now. Like I'm still motivating people and trying, but I can't say too much because when I say motivating, like to be a part of what we're doing, like we got this.
Come on
and
in,
like
You're
we're family.
Here, right.
So we go do a job. We go to sleep. Rule 1, we would never do that. So they must have gave us too much of a dosage, but my body was older. Cinnabuns never woke up. So I remember shaking her like, Cinnabuns, get up, come on, we gotta go. Like we slept, like he gonna beat us. Like, no, let's go. She never woke up. So I called the house mom. There were house moms there that were put in place to look after her on each shift. So I'm like, Cinnabuns is not waking up. She not breathing. She was like, get away from her. Don't touch her. Wash your hands. Get out of there. We're going to send a car to pick you up. I never saw Cinnabuns again. Mm-hmm. So that hurt from that. The first time I thought, what if that was me? Nobody would know where I'm at. She's not even from this country. Her family would never know what happened to her. She was 12. I started when I was 15. I didn't even have that experience. So, they always sent people to talk to us as undercovers. And so I really know who to trust. But it was one man who had been persistent for months. And he finally asked me, he was like, are you okay? You look down today. I broke down. It was my breaking point. I believe everybody has a breaking point. I told him that I was stressed out. I was struggling, that they were raping us, that they were giving us these drugs. They were shooting stuff up us. They were making us work on our period. I expressed everything that happened. And he was a pastor at a local church, and he was working with the FBI.
Oh, the FBI was sending undercovers.
Yes.
Okay.
No, so both. Snake sent undercovers.
Right, that's how I
understood. Because that way,
it.
We never know if somebody's there to really help us.
Gotcha.
And we ain't gonna say nothing, even if it is the real thing.
Right.
Confusion.
So, but then there was real undercovers that would
real
come
undercover.
in.
I didn't know he was undercover though.
But because you were confused, you didn't know.
And he didn't put himself as an undercover.
Right.
So he put himself as just a person who was coming to get services. And he had been doing it for a while, but he's right. What we like to call a square.
You kind of got lucky that this was the one that you got. Okay, but go ahead and tell us about Square.
What? A Square is somebody who comes to get services, but they don't get services that hurt you. They actually are pretty good people. They just want your attention, time, maybe something different, but without penetration. So I called him a Square because it never worked. And he was always good to talk to. So this one time, I mean, we're talking years. He'd been dealing with me for years. And he would only ask for me. I broke through. I didn't tell him about what we did. But I told him about Cinnabons not waking up, and that was enough for them to get an indictment to search on the basis of murder versus prostitution or sex trafficking, things like that. And nobody ever talked. He was wired. So I let a little bit too much of the cat out the bag, because what happened was about 90% of the women after they did the bust got prostitution charges, but not me. So when I say the girls didn't want nothing to do with me, they thought I was like the devil. They was like, she ruined our life. We're going to kill you. Like, I had to leave. I left and went straight to New Orleans. I went to New Orleans on a full scholarship, because what happened was the guy who rescued me, he owned a church called God's Academy. And he was like, let's get your GED. Let's get you into school. I can get you a scholarship. I want to help you. And I listened, and I allowed him to help me. And my life was never the same.
I mean, it's like so fortunate that it was him that broke you and that you were able to tell that to. I wonder with some of the work that you do in terms of working with women who are, because like you have a 501c3 that works with women that are that are trafficked and everything.
Yes.
And forgive me for if I didn't read this in the bio, which I don't think I did, but is there any advocacy for not, like when you're talking about they prosecuted these women for prostitution, when meanwhile we both know, or at least it's assumed, that they went through the same cycle that you went through. They were 12, 15-year-old girls who were innocent and went into the cycle and are now 20, 30 years down the line and are totally, they are brainwashed. So is it fair to prosecute them when they really need help?
No, it's not. And so my first job, so basically I'll get into that a little deeper when we get finished in the story. But after I was saved, I went on to write my story. The first time I ever used my story and shared my voice was when I talked to the pastor. Shared a little bit about me and what happened to Cinnabons. He used that to go back to the FBI and get wired to get an indictment on the basis of murder, to get Snake and his organization shut down. He just they needed to get in the house, but nobody would ever talk. And so I was one of the closest informants, and I didn't know that. So I don't have a record till this day of anything, not a charge, not a conviction, nothing. So after that, there's this guy named Ed Millett, and he says, what you make it out of qualifies you to help others that are still in it.
Yes, he talks about that with his father and everything. Yes.
So I just recently heard that from him. I saw him in Scottsdale, Arizona. But at that time, I didn't know that principle, but I knew that I had an imposter syndrome. And the only way I can pay it forward was to help other people that were still going through what I went through. So I go to college, do my years in college, Same dynamic, but with the right people. I had free housing, free transportation, because we had a shuttle, for 3 meals a day, and a group of women around me that were my teammates in volleyball and basketball. I played both in college, volleyball and basketball. Full scholarship. My why was that I have nothing to go back to. So I can't afford to lose. That was my mindset. So I go on, and first job I get is a community organizer. And I start a coalition called the Louisiana the Solitary Confinement Coalition, and it was a coalition to stop solitary confinement in prisons and to eradicate, how do you put it? It was just my first job. So, but again, that taught me advocacy. It taught me how to lobby, how to coalition build, how to fundraise, how to group grassroots, cause systematic change. And so I took that, and then I went into the Justice and Accountability Center, and then I went to the New Orleans Family Justice Center, and then I became over the Louisiana Foundation Against Sexual Assault. So all of that had to do with legislation and me community organizing and lobbying and going to the state capitol and working on these laws and talking and speaking my story. So when it comes to what you asked me, I think about what was the question about that, like, advocacy part of, like, why?
About them being prosecuted for something that they were brainwashed into doing.
Yes. So that story is what really catapulted me into my success in politics, because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have it happen to me. So they couldn't, if you have a felony or a prostitution charge, you think you could get a job, a house? I think you're going to have a whole house. Like, it holds you back in so many ways, but nobody's looking to see that you were 12 to 18 years old.
Right, that story.
That you were trafficked.
Right.
So one of my biggest things is right now, the legislation I'm looking on is the airport, making it have actual documentation and some type of identity for all kids. Like, I think that it should be something the school gives, like a school ID, but that is honored by the government, that they can use to be able to go and travel.
So just to understand this, because I guess I might have been not paying attention, because I do leave a lot of things in my wife's hands. Yeah. And I got to always say this, because, I'll speak for myself, always give enough credit to my wife for all the things that she does. But I mean, I always thought it was 50-50. When we had our first baby, our first daughter, Denise, I was like, oh, it's 50-50. I wake up in the middle of the night, I give her a bottle, right? And then we had our second one, and I was like, oh yeah, no, it's not 50-50.
Yes, 100. You got it.
And the truth is that, like when we travel, I mean, she takes care of all the documentation, she takes care of all of that stuff. And I don't know any of it. I don't know what's going on, right? So I actually don't know if we travel within the U.S., right, of like flying from here to Florida. All your kids
have to do is say their name.
They don't have to present a passport, no ID, nothing.
Nope.
Okay. Because I know they both have passports, and that's why I'm like, did we show passports? Or
I mean, that's because she's a good mother, and she has y'all have a solid foundation around them, and they have these documents, but all they have to do.
I sound real silly to my audience right now.
No, that's okay, because now the audience needs to know this, right? So,
Devin takes care of everything.
If a child is under 17, all they have to do is recite their name.
And that's it.
That's it.
Wow.
And their date of birth. And if it matches what's you put on the reservation, they're good to go.
And this is where the trafficking happens, is that the kids are moved from different places to where they're not recognized, where there's no background, where they can't just leave the house and walk back down into their old neighborhood.
Yes.
This is how trafficking happens. And then, as you were just saying, Cinnabon was from another country, so then it's like, get them out of it.
If you come from another country and you have the ability to be legal, they hold your paperwork because they're your employer. And they would never give their paperwork back.
Right.
So you can't leave. Where are you going to go?
And as you were saying, this guy Snake was actually a multi-billionaire. Like, they're making, they have all the political connections. It's the whole Epstein type of thing that was happening, or that's happening.
Absolutely. But in America, with little girls like myself.
What are, and I mean, and please continue the story. And I don't want to interrupt it if I am. But what are some of the things that can be done in a way of, like, maybe us being able to see and not be ignorant to, is what I'm saying,
I always say, if you see something, say something. Don't take it into your own hands, because these are criminals. These are
it's organized crime.
It's organized crime, and you're messing with their livelihood. They don't take that lightly. So if you see something, say something. Treat them as people and not projects. Sometimes maybe a woman's been rescued and you see her as a project and you want to do all this stuff, but she's a person. So you have to ask them what they need versus thinking that you know what they need. Be very patient because it takes the time. Most of these women have been vetted and told that what they do is they'll get killed if they say too much. So they live in fear. And so fear, Jim Rohn says, is false evidence appearing real. Now, fear is also there. If you see a lion, you know to run.
Yeah, you're going to get eaten.
Yeah, so it's like if you know you're living with the devil and this person will hurt you or hurt your best friend or hold leverage over you, then you're going to live in that and you're going to do what you have to do. You're not going to say anything and you're going to make everything happen that you need to because of the fear of what will happen if you don't.
And what about the young girls that are being, I guess, prospected for this?
So the young girls that are being prospected for, I would say one, don't just think it's a man that's going to come up to you. It was women that came up to me. Two, there's an app. Gosh, why can't I think of it right now? Look up security app. It's not the name of it, but I'll send you the link. So if the audience is listening, I'll send him the link for you. This app is like the Fab Five or something like that. And it's basically where you put 5 emergency contacts in there. So if you were to come and take me, I just click that button. I click the app, open it, click the button. It sends them my location in real time. And it also sends them all a message, a warning message. There's different built-in messages that you can send. So it's a very innovative way to help yourself if you're put into a position and you have access to your phone, like as it's happening or after it happens or while it's happening. If you can get to a phone, and either, all you have to do is click a button and it'll follow you from now on. I would say...
So, something that you said that while you're thinking about that next one is something that you said that I kind of like recognize, I guess now, like as I look back into my teen years and grammar school years, even growing up, I grew up in the city in Queens, and I remember, there was a girl in class that like we were like boyfriend girlfriend in class, right? But we didn't kiss or anything.
Right.
We were like in 6th, 7th grade. I think it was 7th grade, but she would always have her boyfriend pick her up in her car. She didn't call him her boyfriend. And it wasn't a straight up name. It was like a side name, and I'm not saying it intentionally.
Red flag.
Right. And I remember, in where I grew up, Latin Kings was big, and she always had her beads on. My father was a
Latin King.
Right. She always had her beads on, and he was one, and I knew that. And I always remember, I was just like, I don't understand. Like, is she with him or is she with me? And I didn't understand, but we never really kissed or anything. I didn't really know about kissing. Like to me, boyfriend, girlfriend was just, we're holding hands. We're like, cuddling up together. It was grammar school. Oh, and God. We would be like cuddling up together, like in the classroom, stuff like that. Like just like little like kid type of thing. Yeah. But then he would pick her up after school.